start our recording, so we make sure that we have that. And so again, this is our second session of what normally would have been all of us in Jeff City yesterday for our mentor protege meeting. And once again, if you're just joining us, both mentors and proteges, please go ahead and put your name and your school in the chat box so we have a record of attendance. And with that, I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to send it over to Deanna Thies, and she's going to start talking about professionalism and what does it mean to be a professional educator. So Deanna, it's
Colleen, do I have the ability, can you give me the ability to screen share?
There we go. Okay, try it now. Perfect.
Let me see if this, okay. So I'm working from two screens, so it makes it a little bit easier. Can everybody see my screen okay? Perfect. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Deanna Thies. I teach at Boonville and I'm the Region 4 Vice President, so I actually serve on the NAAE board. So if you ever have any questions about membership and those types of items, please let me know. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna do a little game, so you'll have to do in the chat. I'll ask a few questions and respond in the chat with your answer. So this little trivia game is, Colleen asked me to talk about professionalism, so I decided to maybe spice it up a little bit because I know I'm tired of Zoom meetings, so hopefully this will be a little fun. So let's see who's the biggest professional. So we'll have a series of scenarios, and then after each scenario is presented, type your answer into the chat box, please. So scenario 1, it says a student finds your profile on social media and sends you a friend request. And also send you a private message. You A, immediately accept the friend request and send back a private message saying it's great to be your friend. B, you accept the request but limit what the student can see and send a private message. C, you reject the friend request and then tell the student in person it's best not to friend request you until after they graduate. Go ahead and document your answers. Okay. Looks like we got a variety of them in. So hopefully we have a lot of C answers because what you need to make sure to do is every school has different policies and each teacher follows different policies. But my general rule of thumb I use is I do not friend request or be friends with students on social media until after they graduate. Personally, I like to keep my personal items separate from my school items. Yes, I tell them about things that go on in my life at times, but you need to make sure you divide that separation. The other big portion of that is for safety, liability, and also you always want to make sure to think about those individual messages, whether it be a text message to a student, a private message on social media. A lot of schools actually don't allow you to text message your students, but you want to make sure that you keep those things in essentially the public domain, just so you avoid any of those speculations and make sure you always take a cautious approach when it comes to students. Yes, it's great to listen to their problems and be their friend, but you have to keep it at a professional level. It's not like you would hang out with your college friends someplace. They are your students and you are an adult and you have to keep those things in mind. I'll kind of open it up. Has anybody run across anything like this at this point in time? Or does anybody have, those of you that are first year teachers, does anybody have a specific policy they have to make sure to follow that would be good for your fellow first year teachers to know? So no responses?
Make sure that you're following your school policy pretty close. If you're getting away from that, you better make sure it's okay with your administrator, because lots of teachers have lost their jobs because of social media or cell phone messaging.
Yeah, that's a huge factor. And just don't assume what your school policy is. Make sure you find out what it is if you don't know what it is, especially because even with the FFA chapter, A lot of teachers just assume that it's perfectly fine for you to start an Instagram page or a Facebook page for your FFA chapter. You need to make sure that your school approves that and how they want to handle it. We have our own Facebook page for my chapter, but our school is one of the administrators on it, so they can actually view it and manage it. So you need to keep those things in mind. We also have the general rule of thumb that no student's allowed to post on our page, just because my school or I am the only one that can post on the page, just for those types of things to not occur, hateful messages, those types of things. We also closely monitor comments if anything's commented on there, and we'll delete comments if they're not appropriate. So both on the personal side and on the school side, you really need to watch out for social media. A lot of teachers, like Jason said, have been fired over it or have gotten in trouble. So let's keep moving on. So another social media question. It says, it is homecoming at your university and you decide you need to relax and tailgate and have a couple of drinks. As always, you want to document the entire weekend on social media. You A, post every single picture taken and allow your friends to tag you in every post. B, you sort through the pictures, but the best picture at the bar after the big game and the table is covered in beer cans, but you don't drink at all, so it's okay to post. C, you post pictures and document the weekend, but selectively choose the pictures to make sure they maintain a good appearance or presence. Go ahead and choose your answer. Put your answer in the chat.
Not fair, Deanna, not fair.
What? I don't get to tailgate this year, but.
I actually thought of you, Deanna, when I heard that news about the prosecution of people tailgating, and I was like, don't do it, Deanna. It's not worth it.
Nope, I'm not. We actually deferred our tickets to next year, so. Okay, so let's talk through this, you guys. This one is always kind of your personal preference on this, but my rule of thumb and my suggestion to you as more of a veteran teacher is answer C, that it's great on your personal social media. You should be able to post anything you want, but at the same point in time, you need to maintain a social media presence, which is still professional in nature, because you never know who's going to see it or who will run a social media background check. For those of us that have teaching 18, 20 years, that wasn't something that was around when we first started. I think if you read any of the posts related to National FFA and what occurred with the national officer this year, I think everybody should be extremely aware of what we post on social media and what type of employer, both our current employers or even future employers, or if you want to go into industry, what type of background checks and social media checks can be run on your account. The same principle goes for pictures, memes, and various other causes. Always remember, think before you post. I know a lot of us like things political in nature, but right now you need to keep in mind that it may not be best as a teacher to post things that are extremely political. You also need to make sure, never use your school email to tie to your social media. Make sure if you're doing your own personal social media, make sure it is a personal email account, because anything that is school related can be monitored by your school. So those are things to keep in mind. Does any other mentors have anything to add, or does any proteges have any questions? Okay.
Face it, guys, you're held to a higher standard than if you took a job in some other field. In some cases not. But you are held to a higher standard. And with that comes a lot of perks and comes a lot of responsibility, but you're going to be held to a higher standard.
FYI, this came about a couple years ago with that Proposition B deal. Anything dealing political, you cannot use school resources.
Yep.
Remember
Like
that.
flyers or anything like that.
Just to help your kids understand how serious National FFA is, they have ran 7-year social media background checks on every national officer candidate this year.
So guys, and I understand that, especially proteges, social media is secondhand nature now, and everybody lives off of it. And same thing like Marie said, because of the nature and structure of our programs and because of FFA, we become very close to our students, and they look to us as role models. So just remember to set that example as you go through. A few more topics. Professional engagement. Okay, money is a little tight as a first-year teacher and you haven't paid your MVA TA dues. A, you write a personal check for your dues and can post-date it until September 1 and get them paid for before January 1. B, you talk to your school about paying your professional membership and submit a requisition for their payment. C, you choose to forgo paying your dues for this year and will pay them next year when you have a little bit more money. Everybody put what their thoughts are in the chat. Oh, and we'll go ahead. My suggestions to you is A or B. You do have the ability to post-date your tax until September 1. After September 1, if your dues are not paid, you are ineligible for the NAAE liability policy until they are paid. And dues are considered delinquent by MVATA after January 1. Big thing is also talk to your school. Many school organizations cover membership and professional organizations, and it can be covered through professional development funds. Just talk and ask. So why is membership so important? These are the things that you want to keep in mind. Number one, it provides you, so your packet membership provides you with $100,000 in liability insurance, and you can get up to $2 million for an additional $50 a year, and that can be filled out through the NAAE website. It also allows you to apply for awards, and if there's a gap in membership, you are ineligible for awards. And there's some great awards. I have a slide later on that I think Colleen will be sending out my presentation that has links to those various award applications. It provides you the opportunity to serve as an officer or committee within our organization. And the biggest thing that I tell at every single regional conference, every single state, set the example. If we encourage our students to pay their dues, fill out award applications, and take leadership roles, we should also. And that's something that I've always said, and that's something that I've always followed as I've served as an area officer on MVATA committees, NAAE committees, a state officer, and now a national officer. So professional engagement, another scenario, says your winter district teachers meeting falls on a Thursday night after school in January, and you're so tired from working on applications. You A, head home and take a bubble bath. B, call the ag teacher in the next town and ask if they will pick up an agenda for you and provide you with the information. Or C, you call the ag teacher in the next town and ask if you could ride along to the meeting, which they say yes, so you go to the meeting. Hopefully, in everybody's head, you chose C. Attendance at meetings is critical. It is actually your professional responsibility to attend meetings, and they provide you with great opportunities for professional development. There's announcements, things related to our organization, but also FFA announcements and other announcements that are needed. They benefit both you and your students, and it's also a great time just to talk to your fellow teachers and to be able to network with your fellow teachers. More than likely, if you're going through something frustrating right now, another teacher is going through that exact same problem, and you can figure out a solution or find resources that will help you out. Does anybody else have anything to provide? Specifically district supervisors, is there anything you guys would like to contribute?
Even if you don't have applications, going is vital for you to learn how to do applications and what good applications look like, and how to be involved. You can't learn how to do your state degrees and learn how to do your proficiency awards by osmosis. It doesn't work that way. And so by going and helping judge and learning from other teachers, young or old, you're learning how to do those things and making your program better for the next year.
Okay, so just a few last things as I wrap up. Just a few, I will not, and I will. Remember, I will not date a student. I will not pay my dues. I will not skip professional meetings. I will not maintain an unprofessional presence on social media. I will not consider a leadership role, and I will never apply for awards. So make sure you keep these things in mind, that you will never date a student. and maintain professional relationships with them, that you will pay your dues by September 1 to maintain your liability insurance, that you will attend all meetings and ask others for rides, that you will think before you post on social media, that you will look into holding an officer position and serving on a committee, and that you will check out the NAAE website to apply for award applications. And that's where you apply for the state award applications through. So when Colleen sends this out, I have a variety of links from the NAAE website on awards, grants, member benefits, professional development, also great resources like the Ag Ed Discussion Lab and the Missouri Ag Teachers page is on Facebook, and the Communities of Practice. If you haven't accessed it, those last two have great resources for things across the country that you can grab and go with. I think we're trying to start AET with our first couple of members, and I emailed as an 18-year teacher. I've never used AET. So I sent some messages to fellow teachers, and I found stuff on Ag Ed Discussion Lab that is going to be great resources for me to teach my students. So even almost 2 decades in, I utilize my resources. Don't reinvent the wheel, but take advantage of those things. So does anybody else have any questions or anything to contribute? If not, you can always find my information in the directory. Please don't hesitate to contact me through email, phone, call my cell phone, text my phone. I may not answer, but I will get back to you. So with that, Colleen, I'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Deanna. And Deanna's definitely been a leader in our state organization and now at the national level as a regional officer. And we won't put her on the spot now to see if she'll eventually be there at the president of the whole organization, but hopefully we'll see what comes of the next few years. So thank you so much, but definitely just thinking about what is it that you're doing, and not that you don't have your own free voice or to not ever do anything, just don't put it out there. And you may have lived a different life in college than you are now, and really depending on your community, some things are okay and allowed and some things are not. And so just always be on the side of caution, and then also let your college friends know that. So those are sort of some things to kind of think about as you move forward into this different kind of realm. So next up on the list, we have Zach Cruz. Zach is going to talk a little bit about chapter constitution, bylaws and guidelines, and then also just a little bit about the parliamentary procedure and why do we want all students to learn at least the basics of parliamentary procedure. And so that's going to be a real skimming in 15 minutes, but we wanted to make sure that we spent some time on that. And then if just the main thing I want you to hear on this is please do not reinvent the wheel, especially not on a chapter constitution, because we've got lots of examples out there for you. So Zach, am I turning this on, or did you want to share from your side?
If you can turn it on, Colleen, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Let me just pull it back up here.
Okay, so Colleen asked me to talk about chapter constitutions, and what Deanna said is absolutely right. Any of us that have taught for probably more than 4 or 5 years will share anything with anybody. And I know that one of your assignments is to do your chapter constitution, and I'm going to tell you now that it will save you a lot of headaches in the long run. And obviously what you can do. Just one of those personal stories. My first year when I got to Slater, I sat down with my officers and we reworked the Constitution and make sure if nothing else, you have how your officers are elected in it and how your officer election will work. When I came in the first year, everything was going good, and then we held officer elections, and that can be a huge headache that it doesn't need to turn into one. Colleen, you can skip that first slide if you want to. Anyways, we did the elections. I had a girl that she was going into her senior year that didn't get elected, and mom and dad were not happy. And all these different issues. And I would highly encourage you not to be part of that. Like, have a committee, have your senior officers, whoever, don't be part of the selection committee for your officer team. And our Constitution laid that out, and it probably saved me some headaches. My administration was very supportive of what I did and how we handled it. Those parents actually came to my house that evening, which was not a pleasant experience, but save yourself some headaches. Sit down, whether it's with your officer team, if you're in a multi-teacher department, sit down with the other teachers in your department and just kind of say, hey, do we have this? And, what do we need to look at? What can we fix? Because as much as we all want 2020 to be over and we want to move on and all that great stuff, we don't want to wish the year away. And you're going to get into some just, different things that you're going to have to think about. And it's not going to be a lot of fun if you have to say, well, we did this because. Have it in writing, and the Constitution is definitely there for that. I said, if you email me, I'll be glad to share ours by any means, and I think any teacher on here would be glad to share theirs. And I think Colleen would definitely encourage you for that. Does that cover Constitution, Colleen?
Pretty much. The only other thing I would say is that we do still have some chapters and some schools out there that elect it by popular vote at a regular scheduled chapter meeting. And that's a really bad way to have a popularity contest that you don't necessarily want. Instead of an officer selection. And then I think in the same way of determining how you select officers, it's also really important to make sure that how do you get rid of a student, not get rid of, but how is a student removed from office or removed from when are they no longer a FFA member in high standing? And so you do have to pay attention to those parts, especially of your Constitution. So if a student is caught drinking and gets a ticket or something like that, are they still allowed to be an officer? And it's better for you to have all of those things spelled out of what that, not necessarily they get a ticket for drinking, but that they have what are high ethics and those kind of things. And we have some examples of that. And then it may also be a separate than your Constitution. You may also have an officer guidelines, officer agreement that you're going to put on that these are things that you demonstrate. And so it's better to be proactive, have everything in place so that it's really not your decision. It's did the student, yes or no, it's in black and white. So that would be the only other part that has come up as I've read lots of constitutions.
Marie, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
You talked about changing your Constitution, and now is the time you look at that. Quite honestly, come January, you shouldn't be touching your Constitution. Because that will cause people to say there was favoritism or there was changing to the Constitution to meet a certain individual's needs or wants. Like, if you're going to change your Constitution or you're going to add anything and you're going to do anything, it needs to be well before anything's going to happen. And so if you need to make changes to your Constitution because it is a popular vote or because XYZ, you need to do that now. Do not wait, because it will come back to bite you in the keister.
And to piggyback off both their comments, Colleen talked about like your officers and what happens if one of them, gets a DWI or an MIP or whatever. We have an officer contract at Slater, and before they ever run, I make them sign it and their parents sign it. And I know it's a piece of paper and they can do whatever. But I had a student a few years ago, he got a DWI professionally. He came and told me. He understood the situation. He couldn't be an FFA member. It wasn't that he wasn't, that he made a mistake, but he knew he had to resign his office. And that was just the way it was. And we moved on, the kid, I didn't hold anything against him. He made a mistake, and said always, hopefully we learn from our mistakes and move on. But that's something you need to make sure your kids understand. Like, hey, if you are a great kid, but in one class you can't get along with this teacher, and all of a sudden you're in school suspension every week for how many weeks, we're going to have a discussion about probably moving on from being an FFA officer. All right, Colleen, are you ready for parliamentary procedure? Okay, so I'm going to teach the crash course in Parli Pro in about probably 5 to 10 minutes here. This is the PowerPoint I show my freshmen when I start teaching basic conduct. I don't always train a conduct team, but that is definitely something, if you're just wanting to learn the very basics of parliamentary procedure, that I would encourage just to teach in class and get to know it like with your kids. And like I said, I'll be glad to share this PowerPoint. If you want it, Colleen's got it. She can send it to all you guys and you can doctor it or do whatever you want. But the basic motions that are in conduct will, if you can, those kids can learn probably half of them. All of them are great. There's a couple that they probably don't need to know because realistically, you're never going to use them in a chapter meeting, but just so they know what they are. I am a stickler to parliamentary procedure. I know that Keith is too, and that we both probably really like that. But like when I'm in a meeting, like a school board meeting or a fair board meeting or church board, and people can't make a main motion, it drives me absolutely batty. And I think that's something, if nothing else, you should teach kids how to handle a main motion, like how to properly move a main motion, not make a main motion, not wish a main motion, not I think. It's I move. I move we go to Worlds of Fun for a barn warming, or I move that we hold whatever. And practice that in class with those kids and make them have a, legitimate discussion about why is this a good idea? Why is this a bad idea? And just that's where I start. And we just start talking about main motions. And then we start adding the other motions to it. And Colleen's got control of this, so I'll let her kind of roll through it if she wants to and go to the next slide. This is the objective for the lesson, so I can't even see where I'm at. Hang on a second, Colleen. All right, so you guys can see the objective I have for my kids, and you can move on from there. But we talk about just what is a privileged motion, what is a subsidiary motion, what is an incidental motion, and then what is a main motion. But as you get into those, and you can kind of see these real quick, Colleen, if you want to go to the next slide. It tells you what privileged motions are used for. Really, the two privileged motions that they probably need to understand are probably adjourn, because that's how you end a meeting correctly. And if you need to take a recess, I would hope that in an FFA meeting, you never would have to take a recess. But if there's some heated debate and it needs to, everybody needs to gather their thoughts and take a minute, I guess you can do that. But most of the time, our chapter meetings are not going to last long enough for that to happen. So I guess everybody does things differently, but those are the two. So if she wants to go to the next thing, and it just tells you. So it tells you recess, and the purpose of recess is really just to take a break, and we can keep going through that. You got a question or privilege. Again, this understanding how to use it's great. Is it realistic in a chapter meeting? Probably not. Probably not one that you would have to know, but one that you could, just teach kids basically what happens. And like I said, Colleen can share this with everybody. And if you have questions, I am by no means the guru of parliamentary procedure, but I definitely can, hopefully point you in the right direction. And that's normally going to be Matt Biddle, but, we'll see how things go from there.
Do you have to be a guru to teach freshmen parliamentary procedure?
I don't think you have to be a guru. I think you have to know about this much more than freshmen know, which is not that hard. So you can go from there. Then we have subsidiary motions, which I think is the next thing Colleen's got here. And understanding how to use those. And these probably are more realistic in a meeting where kids actually would have to do something or actually change a main motion or send it to a committee or whatever it might be. So she just wants to roll through. Previous question, really, this would be more like in a heated debate, or you have a lot of debate and people are repeating themselves and people are just ready to vote. That's what previous question does. It stops debate. Some people will call for question, but that's not the same thing. And understanding that's there. You can go on, Colleen. You got postpone definitely, which is just postponing it to a certain time, which could be later in the meeting. It could be the next meeting, whatever. It doesn't kill your main motion. If you want to go on. Okay, you got to refer to committee. This one probably is realistic. I don't know, maybe you guys, as we get ready to, we're getting into fall, and like with us, the National Convention, we all know we're not going to National Convention. So our chapter should have some extra funds that whatever. So we've talked about doing a fall trip and, where are we going to go and how's that going to work and how are those kids going to be selected? So, if you have time and you want to send that to a smaller group to research and bring it back to your chapter, refer to committee is a great thing to do. And there's ways you can do that for whatever. There's POA committees, and that's another discussion for another day, but we'll go on, Colleen, if you want to. Amend is realistic because you're simply going to change your motion. You want to go to your next one. Postpone indefinitely is probably the most unrealistic motion there is. And anybody that knows more about parliamentary procedure than me, if you disagree with me, you can tell me. But I don't really think there's much use in this motion. It kills your main motion, and really it can be used to discuss the main motion more, but I don't, even if you disagree with the motion, killing it forever is not ideal in my mind at all. Then we've got a few incidental motions. Parliamentary inquiry, which that's probably a realistic one. That's just asking a question about parliamentary procedure. Maybe a kid wants to know what kind of vote a motion takes, and it's ruled on by your chairperson. So hopefully your president understands a little bit about it. You have division, and division is just calling for a revote. You want to go through that calling. And then point of order, which fixes a parliamentary mistake. And then we got main motions. So like these are the 10 motions that are in conduct. Obviously all there on the DESI page. You know, if you just want to learn the basics and try to go from there, you can do whatever. And you can see, like, I just put a main motion up on the board and kids start working in groups. What, you know, each group's got to come up with a positive and a negative, and then we all got to discuss it. And if you want your points for the day, you know, you got to discuss. And if you don't discuss, whatever. And I teach kids that you need to vote too. When you vote, do it with like that you care, not just aye, nay, whatever. Like, be heard, because your opinion does matter and you should do it. Other things parliamentary procedure wise that we need to go over, talk about, any questions I can answer.
Any questions for Zach on that or anything else in that kind of direction? And we can share out on the USB, there is a sample constitution. It's also something though that a lot of times it's good to get like multiple different ones, and then you help to determine with your students what is best for you. Something else I think that's really key is if you want to teach parliamentary procedure, like Zach has it there on the USB under the novel teaching ideas. There are multiple different ways to teach Parli Pro and to have kids get engaged with it. Lots of different activities there that you could that you can do and to be a part of. And that is one of those things that if you want more information on that, if it's something that you would really like to do, most of the teachers who have a person, or they have a team, they don't start with what it takes to be a Parli team. So we're talking about every student should leave your program knowing how to do those things, make a main motion and have debate. And it's absolutely something that it's part of also what we talk about with the voting part of, that's a conversation that you should have with students. It's a part of what we do as citizens of the United States. And so it's a good idea to talk about ideas and help kids, give them a safe place to have some of those kind of things. Jill Chapman shared that there is great online PD coming out of Purdue for beginners or professionals. They host the national contest, so it fits the classroom setting and the contest. And every single district has someone who knows Parli Pro well, but it's also something that don't be scared of it. Don't think you have to have a whole contest. You can just get your students involved with it, because that's really where it starts. So next up on our agenda, we have John and from Sherwood. So John, do you want to go ahead and try to see if your screen will share? And I know, John, hopefully you have enough time here before I know you got to get to trap practice. Yeah, several of our mentors agreed, and to see if you can share your screen, John. Perfect. Perfect.
Oh, on screen.
We can see it.
That was the wrong PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. So Abby, you've not received your flash drive yet. Okay.
Does it say is it the blue screen?
It is a blue screen, yeah.
Okay, and it says Mr. Kirchoff shop environment.
It is, yep.
Perfect. All right, that's the right one then. Okay, so to start off, I'm by no means an expert. I've had a little bit of success in the shop and Ag Mech, but I'm happy to help just like everybody else is. But like I said, no means am I an expert at all. I'm just going to share some of my experiences. So we go through here. Most important aspect of all shop classes is safety. Safety tests are not the most fun thing in the world. They're actually really kind of boring, especially to teach. But they are a necessity. And first thing that I think you should focus on is that every kid has to achieve 100% on all of those safety tests before they complete anything and use those in the shop. We had a teacher in our area that had a kid go out to the shop, use a piece of equipment, I think cut a partial tip off of his finger, and the kid was not safety tested or didn't have 100%, whatever the case may be, and the teacher lost his job. You don't want that to be able to happen. So it's good to have that documentation and do it every single year, even if you had a kid in the shop for 4 straight years. Just always have it and always know they're up to date, so you can go back and prove that you told them how to do it and what the best way to use everything was, and you cover your butt, essentially. Okay. A typical year in my class, we'll look at all the machinery and tools that we're going to use, describe their function, probably take an ID test. Then we'll take a safety test in the classroom. We'll test over all of those tools, and then to show that they know how to use it and they've learned it, I will assign a tool or multiple tools to each student in the class. The student will then have a couple days to become the expert and work with me, and then they will demonstrate to the class, and then the whole class will demonstrate the use after each kid has done it. I've done it before where I do all of that and it gets boring and they don't want to listen to me, but sometimes they take a little more out of it if they learn from their classmates. So it's kind of how I roll with it. Kind of breaks it up and makes it not so boring and monotonous from just me talking about it. Moving on to budgeting. So at our school, we have a supplies account and an ag resale account that are related to the shop. Supplies for us is essentially for consumables and tool purchases and things that are always going to be around for use. It's a little bit tough at my school because as the accounting department rarely provides us updates or proof of where money comes out of. So we try to keep track of it on our own a little bit. But really our supplies account does start at a couple thousand every year. And so, we can get little purchases throughout, or the general stuff like the gases and the wires and stuff for welding, electrodes, all that stuff will come out of the supplies account. Resale is for our projects. I'm usually good with my accounting department as long as I end up in the black or at least close at the end of the year with proof that I either have material left to cover it or there's still some projects going on in the shop that need to be finished up throughout the summer or whatever the case may be. Or in the case of a COVID year, they're still in the shop being ready to be finished. But it is what it is. Depending on the project size, though, this account may be, in my case, has been up to $20,000 in the red. Makes my accounting secretary a little bit nervous, but once I'm able to explain everything, all is good. I probably wouldn't run it in $20,000 in the hole in your first year. But now that I've been here for 10 years, I kind of understand what goes on. And that was kind of that was a little bit different year since we were building a huge gooseneck trailer and the kid owed me $15,000 or whatever it was. So everything turned out good in the end and it was just fine. So that's budgeting. My classes that I have, so I teach 2 classes in the shop, and it's a little bit easier for me just because we have 2 teacher program. So I teach an ag construction and an ag structures class. And that doesn't include the times that we go out in ag science 2 or even my 8th grade class that's kind of exploring intro to ag mech. But these 2 classes, we're out basically in the shop all year long. In ag construction, the way I go about ag construction, since I do have the 2 classes, we'll do safety and tool ID to start off the year. We'll do a welding progression chart. It'll be similar to what they did as sophomores in ag science 2, but obviously advanced a little bit more. We'll throw in a few different welders and things like that for them to progress through on their skills. We'll work on how to design a plan for building a project. And then they have the rest of the year after that to construct a project. My general rule is 1, they can build whatever they want as long as they pay for it. And 2, is mostly going to be individual. Yes, they can work together in groups sometimes if they need help on something or whatever, but each individual person is going to build a project. And they sign a contract that says they're going to do that. I've had anything from a small pallet sign to a 32-foot gooseneck trailer and anything in between. Obviously, not every kid's going to be able to afford a $15,000 trailer to build. And even some kids aren't either say they aren't or definitely cannot afford to do even like a small sign, and that's totally okay. But they have to, like, it's part of their contract to show me and come talk to me and discuss that they can't afford that and it's not okay. And so I will find a project for them to do, whether it's for me or a person in the community or school or whatever the case may be, because they signed up for the class, so they're gonna do what everybody else is doing. And so I even, like, I bought a book at Menards that has pallet projects, and we always get pallets for whatever stuff gets delivered to the school, so they can rip apart a pallet or 5 or whatever it calls for and build something in there, and then we can sell it at a silent auction. We can sell it to somebody else. They can have it because we don't have much cost from the pallet project, whatever it is. Okay. Ag structures. This class for me, I base it a little bit more off like the ag mechanics contest, and get some of that stuff, like still do safety and tool ID, but I get in the building construction and building with wood and plumbing and welding, electricity, small engines, concrete. We have a CNC machine. So that's the class that the kids learn to design on there and do signs and metal cutouts and things. But mostly it's focused as a group project class. And so, for example, this year already, we were talking about how to build walls and design walls and do construction. And there was a teacher in our middle school that needed basically a false wall behind a sink to cover up some plumbing that's on an exposed wall where they knocked down a closet. So we built a false wall and talked about all the stuff that went with building construction and the spacing and stuff they needed. And then we built it and took it and installed it in the room. Plumbing, we'll do marshmallow shooters. And then sometimes we go attack other classes, typically first year teachers, and shoot marshmallows at them. We'll do welding projects. A lot of times we'll build a trailer that we raffle off every year in that class. We've got electricity. We'll do those little circuit boards. Like a lot of times you might see an Ag Mech contest, or just, we'll hook up a light, an outlet, and a socket, a light, an outlet, and a plug-in, and see what happen. Small engines. We get small engines that were donated from Briggs and Stratton down in Poplar Bluff. So if you guys teach a small engines class, they're always willing to give engines to programs. As an example, I've been down there twice actually, but the second time around I asked for 20. I showed up, they gave me 45 and told me to take them off. So they're willing to get rid of it. They'll help us out, and they got a nice program for ag teachers to basically walk you through it. And honestly, when I started 10 years ago, so some of you are new, or a lot of you are new, and this might seem overwhelming, I knew nothing about small engines, nothing at all. I kind of taught myself along the way. The first 2 years were a little bit rough, but as we went forward, I got a little bit better, and utilize resources, utilize people in my area, and I feel pretty comfortable with it now. Concrete, we're actually right now we're pouring concrete pads for our trap shooting team. So we made 5 pads that they can stand on and replace the ones that we have that kind of broke up a little bit. So there's a lot of different things you can do in the classes that come up, whether it's for you, for the school program, whatever the case may be. Contracts and payments. So all students in my ag construction class, like I said earlier, they sign a contract. It states that they'll build their own project. If it's their own project, they will pay before the project leaves, either all at once or they'll set up a payment plan. If they don't get it done in time, or if they don't ever sell and we don't settle on it, I will put a for sale sign on it and we will take care of it that way. Project costs for them will include whatever it costs for me to buy the materials plus 15%. And that shop fee helps us to offset costs of the program. Does it cover it all? Probably not, but it gets pretty close. Some people I think do 20%, but somewhere in that range, you're probably sitting all right. And I mean, the general goal, you're not really in it to make money. You just want to cover the costs and give the kids a good learning experience, in my opinion. And for any of the other projects, like if a community member wants to ask us to build something or whatever, they get a 15% fee also. And then that's where we do kind of wind up making some money on them a little bit and so on. And so, like I said, I went kind of quick there. I'm willing to answer any questions you might have and try to help. I'm no expert, but I definitely feel that shop classes are truly some of the most important. I have multiple examples of grads coming back to me and saying that these classes got them to graduation. And if it wasn't for that class, they wouldn't have stayed in school or wouldn't have made it through, because that gave them something to look forward to every day to come work in the shop and whatever. So like I said, I'm willing to help. You can send me emails. I can do what I can, or I can direct you to where you need to go. But I've said this a lot too. You know, Ag Mech contest it's daunting. There's a lot to it, and it seems like our participation has gone down over the past few years. And I'm willing to help anybody, and I think it's a good contest, especially for some of those boys, like I said, that or some of those kids that don't have a lot to look forward to in the class, and they really look forward to the shop. So by that's pretty much what I got. Colleen, I don't know if.
No, I thank you very much, John. You covered some of the things I wrote down there. So making sure that you get some upfront money from people. Also just really knowing like what it is that, not only what your community like expects from you, but what can you provide? So when I was at Tuscumbia, I mean, it's a glorified garage basically. And there, if we had a trailer in the building, that would be the only thing that could happen in that shop. And so like a 32-foot gooseneck is what they were wanting. And I was like, you can't afford that anyway. And so knowing some of those things, and you may say, well, I don't know how, how much that will cost. That's why you use people around you. It's also really good to know. So for example, it was so much better for me to work with Willard Haley at Eldon, a close school nearby, to say, hey, Willard, when are you going to get a load of metal? Because I could get a dad or someone when I didn't have my own pickup or trailer to go get the metal from Eldon instead of driving all the way to Sedalia Steel, which is a hour each way kind of thing, hour and 15. So those are also things of like asking people around you, local teachers, of like, where do you get those metals? And then if you don't have an idea of how much something is going to cost, to give a student an idea, use your mentors, use some of these experts that we have in your area that can help with that. And there is an expert list. It does need to be a little bit tweaked and updated. That is on our Teach Ag page, but every district has an expert list, and there's some different ones like this. And so sometimes it's Ag Mech contest, which John said, guys, he meant that in a general term. Girls can do it too. It's really encouraging, but absolutely agree with him that there were some students that get to graduation because they have a chance to show that mechanical intelligence that they have. And that's really important that we keep those things in mind and that we continue to provide that. The other thing is that ag mechanics or greenhouse or animal science or any of those things, they're skill development. The other day on a call, Bruce Fowler said that learning how to do business records, skill development. So you may not know how to do it right now, but the more time you put into it and the more you practice it, it is something that you can absolutely learn as well. And so John, I really appreciate that. And those things, I want to learn the plumbing marshmallow shooter. That would be a fun one. I think I might do that with our 4-H kiddos. So good ideas there. And I shared some things in the chat with some of those pieces. But again, this is a real broad brush. And so if you have some of those things, you need to make sure that we get into it a little bit closer. Key that he said at the beginning that I want to bring back again is safety, safety, safety. And that doesn't matter if it's ag mech, it doesn't matter if it's greenhouse, it doesn't matter if it's animal, it doesn't matter if it's food science. If you're doing anything that students could get harmed, greenhouse has some pretty sharp greenhouse knives, right? You may need to make sure that they have been properly instructed, every single student, every single piece of equipment. The other thing that you have to keep track of is making sure that your equipment is in operating order. If you're going to, if something happens and there's an accident, the lawyers are going to find whether or not you personally or the school system were negligent. And that looks like, are you acting as most other people do? And so what that means is that you have to make sure that things are working accurately. We had an incredible table saw at Tuscumbia. It was an old piece of equipment. It was great. However, the guard that was on it would not work properly. So we had to get rid of it because you can't have a table saw that, oh, well, the maintenance man's the only one that's supposed to use that, or it's Miss Abbott, because if you're gone a day and some kid goes out there and they get on the table saw, you're going to have an issue. Back to Deanna's comment, that's why part of the reason why you need liability insurance from your professional organization. We hope none of these things happen. This is not a scare tactic. we've all known people where things happen. And so we just cannot stress safety enough, and making sure that you're always, always, always having kids wear safety glasses. You're always, always, always having students, when it's appropriate, making sure they're always having those things documented and done. And if you need any of those pieces, you don't have safety tests, then please let us know, and we'll help you get that way. Okay. Sorry for that rant. It's just a passion of mine to make sure that those things happen, and we don't want to lose great teachers because they just didn't see everything that should be seen. So next up, then we're going to kind of flip to the other side, lab management, and Jill Chapman is going to join us to talk a little bit about greenhouse management. So Jill, can you share your screen, okay?
I didn't realize we were supposed to be that professional, Colleen.
You don't have to be. We can stay. I kind of like seeing the little Brady Bunch mode. So you just go right ahead. I may put mine in presenter mode so I can see you a little better and go from there. Good stuff.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit about the greenhouse. I came up with 5 points. So I'm going to cover 1 point and then see if you have questions. So if we get through 2 points, that's great. If we don't get through them all, and my son doesn't have a place to hang out after school. So if you hear a child in the background, Thomas was so excited about coming to this Zoom meeting.
Good.
So the first thing that I want to share with you kind of is what they just talked about in the shop. Your greenhouse is not a wholesale company. So you will have administrators that say, well, that's your greenhouse and you have to pay for all of that. That is a lie. You need to come up with a relationship with your principal or your superintendent. You cannot be in charge of paying for everything that has to do with that greenhouse and be a teacher. So I have an agreement with my principal that if we get FB4 money for a greenhouse something and a greenhouse improvement, then he's off the hook that year and doesn't have to buy my plastic. But if I didn't get any FB4 money that year, then he's going to have to chip in $1,000 and buy my pots and trays and a little bit of my chemical, because this is a learning experience. It's not our job to make money. It's not our job to make the school money. So if your account is in the hole, right now it's September, my greenhouse account is already $2,000 in the red, because when does your greenhouse make money? In the spring, and it only makes money in the spring for about 5 days. So I operate in the red almost every day of the year. Do not let that scare you. You need to just talk with your presenter or your principal or your bookkeeper so that they understand. You're gonna have expenses all year long, and then in April on your plant sale, you've got a plan to get your account back to zero, or $400 or $500, whatever you agree on. My principal is fine as long as I get back to zero. And then the rest of our money goes to the FFA, because the kids did a whole lot of work and get no credit for it and don't get paid labor. I don't know about you guys, but in my greenhouse, my kids work hard. And so once I get my account back to that zero margin, then all the rest of that goes in our FFA funds, and we have extra pizza at state convention. We have hot dogs after party in May, all with that money that we got from the greenhouse. Does anybody have any comments on that? Like how you could get some money for your greenhouse, how you would talk to your principal about that?
It is a laboratory. It is the same kind of laboratory that your shop is. It's the same kind of laboratory that a food science lab would be. It is a laboratory. It is a place for students to apply hand-on experiences. And that's the way it should be treated. Now, the one thing I will add to what Jill said, and this was from personal experience, the one thing you need to watch is make sure that you have that conversation with your administrator so you know where that money can go. The school I taught at for a time period, there was a stipulation that any money raised by the greenhouse had to stay in the greenhouse account. It could not go anywhere else. And so that made it kind of rough to encourage kids to work their hardest because, you know, they weren't working for that little extra. So you just need to know and you need to have those conversations. But your greenhouse is a laboratory.
Yeah, and I actually compare it more to like the chemistry. Do you make the chemistry teacher pay for all the gas or all the chemicals? And in that way, and a lot of times there's some things that maybe that are going to go into a plant sale that may be different funding, just like John said, depending, and you may get into this, Jill, but it is one of those things that if you need to have that conversation about budget, please talk with your DESE supervisor and your mentor about that, because there's some things that we can help you kind of have that conversation to make sure that you have like supplies for your classroom that you're using for teaching, supplies for, which could also be a greenhouse, supplies for, or the FFA is like a separate entity that it shouldn't be that your FFA is also making money for all this, or your greenhouse or your shop should not pay for everything. There's some things that it's a class, and in order to teach the content, I need the supply budget. So.
Exactly. Thanks, guys, for those comments. FE4, if you didn't read the comment, I use FE4 for the greenhouse every year. Don't ever not fill it out, because there's always something that you can get to improve, because everything in the greenhouse and the shop is always being used up. So 5 years ago, I asked for an irrigation system. Well, if you've ever been to El Dorado, our water is orange. So our irrigation system needs to be replaced. So I put it on my system again, or on my FE4 again this year. So always be thinking about your 5-year plan with your FE4 money and how you can improve your shop and your greenhouse, because it's a process. Hopefully you came into a school, maybe they already had a 5-year plan there for you, and you're like, this is what I was supposed to get with my FE4 money. So help out the person that's there after you with what you're needing. Okay, I'm gonna move on to my second topic. That being said about greenhouse being a learning lab, I also use my greenhouse as a huge outreach tool. I walk up and down the hallways at my school, and everybody knows I'm the plant lady. I don't know if I really know that much about plants, but the elementary teachers know that when their science unit comes up about plants in April, that they are welcome to come to the greenhouse. And so every year, the 3rd grade and 4th grade, they bring their class out. It's kind of a week-long process for me. It does take some time, but those kids come to the greenhouse, spend 10 minutes walking around. They each get to plant a seed that costs 10 cents. So they plant a seed and they walk away with a really good perspective of what FFA is, what agriculture is, and that the greenhouse is something that I can do. Obviously, it's going to take a few years for that to come into my program, but in a few years, I'm going to have kids that are going to say, I was in the greenhouse when I was in the 4th grade. And so use your greenhouse and let other people in your school use it, because just like we were talking about, it's a laboratory. It is a laboratory, and everybody should have access to it, because it's really the school's, not just yours, even though you're kind of in charge of it. So I invite the 4th grade. Another thing that I've done is I've reached out to our special ed. Sometimes those people need an avenue. They need a space. And so I have a special ed teacher that he brings his kids out, especially when my plants are there in the spring, and they just needed a break, a place to go, something outside. That has absolutely no effect on me. Go out there, walk around. It doesn't bother me. And it goes a long way with building relationships in your school. So people know that that resource is there. Last thing that I've had people do is they needed supplies. Middle school science was like, Jill, where would you suggest for me to buy a bag of soil and 20 green bean seeds? I am just desperate. Okay, well, their desperation costs my budget about $5. So I supplied those supplies for them, and I said, you know what would probably be better? Why don't you just grow your 20 green bean seeds in the greenhouse? Because it's November. There's not a whole lot going on out there. And I saved that teacher's day, and now it's a thing they do every year. So use your greenhouse as an outreach tool in your school to build relationships, because we need teachers and administrators to know what's going on in our program, and that's a great way to do it. Any thoughts on that? No?
I just want to piggyback off what you just said. I just sent a comment about only using your greenhouse for 4 months of the year and using other stuff, using it as a true laboratory. If you're like at my greenhouse, I've got poinsettias and then mums through the summer and then roll into poinsettias. But I have had conversations with previous year's administrators about why aren't our science teachers using it, since how school's paying the heat and water bill and all that stuff anyway. And so I use mine all but just a few weeks out of the summertime when I shut it down and try to let everything bake. So if you're going to claim it as your laboratory, you need to use it as your laboratory. And as you pointed out, not just a wholesale.
Yeah,
Hey, Jill,
exactly. Thank
just
you.
to sell adult education, I had a teacher that would invite the community garden club in. They
Yeah.
paid for supplies and planted in the winter all the plants that they wanted to plant around the community, and they planted them, had a class with them, and then the kids were in charge of taking care of them. But that's one way that this teacher got a lot of the greenhouse supplies paid for. They paid
Right.
for the seed and the equipment and the pots and everything.
Actually, that works in perfectly. Thanks for your comments about the greenhouse class should be 75% hands-on learning. If you want to teach plant science, I think that's great. I keep trying to convince my counselor to let me do that, but she just says I have to teach a greenhouse class. So greenhouse means 75% of the time they should be doing something. And you should be preparing that botany class for their senior year or those basic plant science needs in their Ag 2 class. So I'm going to give you some examples looking here at my notes. In the fall, there is no reason not to have your greenhouse doing something. Start cuttings. Some things that I'm going to start about, usually we start it right before National Convention, but that's not a thing this year. So we always start wandering Jews, Bolivian Jews, spider plants, tons of other stuff. Swedish ivy, I do a lot of different ivies because if you start them from cuttings, they're basically free. So your kids are working really hard and they've been a good class, let them take one home. It didn't cost you anything besides the pot, and they worked really hard. So another thing, if you run out of space and you're like, I paid for these plugs, but then I also have all of this greenery, then just give the greenery away. All of these Wandering Jew baskets, all you have in them is a couple of dollars. So I start a ridiculous amount of them, like 100 cutting baskets in the fall easily. And as the spring goes on, you can use them for decoration. It's just a good thing to get the kids out in the greenhouse working even in the fall. Ferns too, somebody already mentioned poinsettias. If you've got a green thumb, you can do poinsettias. If you've got a black thumb, stay away from it. Your first couple of years of teaching, it's not worth the stress. Pick that up when you have a little bit more of a grasp on your greenhouse. But ferns, nobody can kill them. So get some ferns from a wholesaler in your area. Plug for Joplin Greenhouse if you're in Southwest Missouri. He will give you ferns. He charges you about $4. You can easily turn around and sell them for $20 and make a really good profit off of them. So it's still not too late to order from him. And it gets the kids busy. Another thing, I have had this conversation with veteran teachers before that I get my plugs in January and they're like, why would you do that? Well, because it's a greenhouse class and my kids like it. So we get plugs in January and then we get another set of plugs in February. So when we come back from Christmas break, we hit record books hard. Everybody fills out their state degree and then we're going to be in the greenhouse every single day. And it's good for my soul and it's good for my kids because it's relaxing. So you can order plugs as early as you want. And so if you've got the time and the resources, then order those plugs in January so that they can really start them from a very tiny size and see that growth happen before your April sale. Also with your greenhouse being hands-on, community service projects don't have to be free. They can be covered by, you have a bunch of petunias left over that didn't sell in your greenhouse sale. If you will call the pharmacy, the bank, whatever it is, and say, I've got all these petunias left, they will pay you to come to their business and plant their flower beds, and they will buy your product. So your greenhouse made a little extra money. If some of you inherited an account that was already in the red, that's not fun, but it happens all the time. And so you can use some of those community service projects and actually get paid for the task. So you can kind of balance your budget. And then lastly, another thing that I do to get the kids busy is we do a cool season garden. It's not even too late to plant one. You can get a raised bed. You can plant it in lick tubs, but we've already started ours. We're growing carrots, radishes, broccoli, cabbage. You would be amazed at how many kids have never planted a seed or eaten some of the vegetables that you're going to have in a cool season garden. We don't grow that many. Most of the time, it's just enough so that everybody can say they've eaten a radish, even though they've never had one. So that's kind of our plan and reason for the cool season garden. So any questions that I haven't answered over Colleen in the comment box? I could go on longer, but I know I used up my time. So
It is good. And I think those are all good ideas and good thoughts. And yeah, we still have maybe not quite 35 days of growing left, depending. El Dorado has a few more than maybe Maryville does at this moment in time, but there are some things to think about. And it's also like, what do you want to do now to plan for your spring? And so I think those are things to think about. It's also that, you know, Jill also said on the same, whether you're talking about your Ag Mech or you're talking about greenhouse, just remember that laboratories are for learning. They are not necessarily to be a trailer factory. They're not necessarily to be the, you know, hanging basket capital of the world. And so just thinking about those things. And again, making sure that you're telling kids safety things about the greenhouse, you know, and making sure that, you know, they're not drinking out of your irrigation system that also has the fertilizer injector attached to it and those kind of things, even though some of them may, if that would, we could guarantee they would not reproduce, it may be something we would just allow them to do, but no, we like kids. So it is something to make sure. And again, even with the knives, like they don't always have common sense. They don't always, they may not have used a knife in the same way they may not have eaten a radish. And it's just amazing the things that kids have not, and a lot of times they've never produced anything themselves. And so building that pride is a key piece of what we do from any of those pieces. And then Aaron said, yeah, we started a school garden this year. It's a great extension of the greenhouse in the spring and leads to student SAE projects in the summer and still working in it this fall, which is absolutely awesome because we have several raised beds here for our after school program. But the problem with that is when those elementary kids are not in session, what happens with it? So we're really working with our FFA chapter to try and make sure those kids use it for, we have people with their SAE and that kind of thing, because it is a great time if you enjoy it, not a great time if nobody takes care of it and then your administrators want to talk about the eyesore that it is. And so making sure that those things are happening. So those things there. Go ahead, Marie, and then we'll get to our final presenter.
Long-term things to think about plant sales. Where do you want to open it to the community at any time? Are you setting hours? Can they come during the school day? Things to just kind of start thinking about when you do those plant sales. Is it attached to your building? Do they have to go through your building? Is it a security issue? And then think about, what are you going to do when you have leftover plants? Those of you that don't know, my husband is on the call, and one of the things that we kind of agreed that we both did is we didn't really give away plants. Like, every teacher may have gotten a hanging basket for Teacher Appreciation Day that happens in May because I had leftover hanging baskets, or every teacher may have gotten a pack of plants, but I didn't ever cut my prices on plants. It either went out the door for full sale price, or it went as a teacher appreciation present, or it had bugs and it went in the trash can. I would caution you even about throwing it in the dumpster, because people are digging through the dumpsters and grabbing like my aphid-laden impatiens and then wanting to know why I sold crappy plants. Haha, I didn't sell crappy plants. You took the crap. So thinking through those things about, are you going to do sale dates? Are you going to cut prices on things? There are things for or against. You just need to decide what works for you. Greenhouse is my passion. If you ever have questions, I would love to help you out, because I don't get that fun anymore.
Thank
Can
you.
I just say one more thing? Sorry, Colleen.
Absolutely. No, go ahead.
Your plug order, that was my next point, I'm already placing my plug order right now, so don't panic if you're like, I haven't even thought about it. But a lot of suppliers give discounts for starting early. So the supplier that I use, if I get my order in before October 15th, he gives me a 20% discount. And I've got a big greenhouse. I ordered like $2,000 worth of plugs, so 20% helps out. And other thing, find a friend to order with and co-op, because you have to buy things in sets, like 26, 51, 512. And so if I have to buy 512 white geraniums, that's kind of a bummer. But I co-op with 4 other teachers, a couple of you are on this call, and I co-op with you, so I only have to take 100 white geraniums, and then I can also get a tray of pink and a tray of red, and kind of gives us some more variety. So reach out, find somebody to co-op with, and think about your plug sale now.
Absolutely. And again, so just to make sure the plugs are what go into like a hanging basket, or they're small plants that you're going to grow out larger. But all of those things of making sure, in the same way I said, Mr. Haley got in our medal at Eldon, and I would go and pick it up. There was a whole group of us that all worked together, like she said, so we didn't have the same purple petunias, but lots of variety because we ordered together. And if you don't know about that yet, again, start with your mentor and then work from there. If your mentor doesn't do anything in that area, no problem. But just talk to other area teachers, and everybody wants to make sure that we are doing what we can for new teachers. So they're always trying for that. So we are going to be just a few minutes over, but we've done really well so far. So we're going to stay on, and we're going to move to our final presenter, Mr. Scott Stone, who's going to talk to us, just like Aaron had said, about SAE projects in the summer and in the fall. Some of the time those things, if you're helping in those gardens and you're having those students come over and do other things with, especially with elementary, it can look at Ag Ed. It can also be some things in the plant sciences. So there's lots of those. And we absolutely need students going into ag science careers. And so those are things that we need to definitely hear. And I asked Scott specifically, Scott could also probably present on most of these topics that we talked about tonight. But he was one of the main leaders in our SAE conversations this spring and during the COVID closure especially, and then as we move forward from that. And so one of the things that we absolutely need to make sure that teachers are doing is paying attention to that part of it, that the experiential learning that we get through, that students get through SAEs, is key to what it is that we do. And so we want to make sure that we are encouraging that with our new professionals, those of you who are proteges, and then keeping that at the front of our mind all the time as ag teachers. And so, Scott, did you have a screen to share, anything to share PowerPoint wise, or are you just laying your wisdom on us?
Okay, I don't have a PowerPoint to share necessarily. I have
Perfectly
lots
fine.
of PowerPoints. Can you guys hear me okay?
I hear some
Can you hear me?
gunfire.
You're trap shooting.
Okay,
Good
well,
stuff. Go ahead.
So we had a change of plans tonight, and I had to drive a school bus, so I'm standing at the trap range right now. In the back, well, I went to the back of the woods, but I still have some reception, so I'll do this as long as I can stay on. Sorry about that. So if you hear the guns fire, I'm not shooting kids, and they're not shooting. Thank you, Colleen, for you guys. I don't envy you in the position you're in, you new teachers, because I've been doing this for 23 years, and I feel like this is all brand new to me, and I feel like I'm chasing my tail. So don't feel bad. But SAEs, I think, are incredibly important. And I could probably talk for like 5 days on SAE projects because they are a huge passion of mine. And I think it's something that I'm just going to kind of tell you what I do at our program. And then if you have questions, you can let me know. I know 5:45 we're supposed to be done, so I'll try to keep this real short. Number one, I think it is absolutely positively essential that 100% of your students have an SAE project. And it's hard, I know. When I started teaching, 75% of my kids came from a full-time farm. Now it's less than about 10%. So sometimes finding those SAE projects is difficult, but you've got to be creative. You've got to work with ag teachers around you. You have to work with your community, and you need to find them something. The National Council for Ag Education just recently put out, looking into several categories, and one of those categories is kind of finding out about different careers, different projects, different ideas. It doesn't have to be huge. Now, the other thing, which I'm going to say this, and some people will like yell at me, but SAEs are not all about getting state degrees and proficiencies. SAEs are about learning skills, learning how to be a responsible worker, developing those skills that those students need in the workplace. Not every one of your kids is going to get a state degree. Not every one of your kids is going to get a proficiency. It's a great goal, but if that becomes all SAEs are about, then I feel like we've missed the boat. And the other thing is, it becomes really, you know, we're going to get state degrees, who you know are going to get proficiencies. But agriculture education is about educating every student every day in every classroom. And it doesn't matter if that kid has 3 green bean plants or 1,000 acres of green beans, which is a lot, especially for someone who doesn't like green beans. You've got to pay attention to that student too. They probably need you more than the student with 1,000 acres of green beans. So 100% of your kids need to have a project, and that is so important. Does that project have to last all year? Absolutely not. Now, National FFA may argue with me on that, but if you've got a kid who's raising a market hog, that's 3 months out of a year. So the kid says, well, I don't have anything to put in my record book because I only have that pig 3 months out of the year. That is when you've got to say, okay, I need those personal expenses. I need that personal income. You've got to have records all year. So I think that's really, really, really important. And one thing I do to combat that is I check record books once a month. It's worth 30 points. 10 points for receipts, 10 for expenditures, and 10 for the cash flow, or Form 5. So I grade it every month. It's 30 points. So every kid in my program knows, in my classes, I shouldn't say my program, in my classes know that they have to do that record book every month, and I expect it. And like right now, my kids are freaking out because I'm grading March, April, May, June, July, and August right now. And they're like, that's a lot, Mr. Stone. I'm like, yes, it is. I didn't give you points, but anytime I give you an assignment, I think it's important enough to grade, so I'm going to grade it. So my kids are getting lots of points right now, and some of them are happy, some of them are not so happy. So I think those are really important, that you grade it every month and that every kid has it. The other thing is right now, there are all kinds of restrictions. So you have got to be creative in terms of making those SAE visits. I am of the old school. I've been doing this 23 years, and I think every kid deserves a visit of some sort. So at this point, maybe your kid goes, or wherever their SAE project is, I said farm, I didn't mean that, wherever their project is, and they call you and they Zoom with you so that you can see what they're have that visit. And I mean, that's as one side as a computer visit where you're back and forth. But I think coming up with those visits are really, really, really important. But the other thing right now you got to keep in mind is my wife had breast cancer, so coming to my house is, you know, a little bit of a challenge, and I don't experiences, and I don't want a lot of people there. So make sure it's okay before you go. Also have a discussion with your administrator. What is acceptable right now? What is not acceptable right now? But be creative and have those conversations. One of the things that I'm still working on, and it came up this summer when I did my workshop, you know, what kind of questions do you ask them? And they're supposed to do them, but we're not really sure what we're supposed to talk about. Talk about the project. Talk about what they're learning. Talk about what they don't know. If you've got one of the other ones that's become a little bit more challenging is, used to be a lot of times I would do a placement visit, and it was really easy to drop in and do that visit. Well, it's become a little bit more difficult now because, you know, my kids working at McDonald's, their boss doesn't want them talking on the phone to me, or, you know, or talking to me in person. So make sure you talk to the employers and you know what their protocol is, especially like, you know, I've got some kids who are starting doing some agri-science research projects, and they don't want me there seeing their research, which I get. So talk to them, you know, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, what can I see, what can I not see? Have those conversations so that you know what is going on and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Okay, it's 5:51. So what questions do you have for me? Is there any specific questions that you want to know that I haven't answered? Like I said, I could go on for this about days, but what questions do you have, or what have I missed, Miss Colleen, that you want to make sure that I talked about?
No, I think you did a lot of it there, and I'm just going to follow up by saying, just like he kind of started his, talk about, this is not necessarily about awards. One thing to remember or to think about though, is that you do want to document the growth that a student has. And so make sure that you always have your phone, if you're old school and you still have a camera, whatever it is that you're going to capture those photos with, because you do want to make sure that you have that. And then equally as important is, how do you keep track of those? So is it on a Google Drive? Is it located somewhere? You know, some of the time over the summer, it's even, maybe you're not allowed to take that photo right now, but it may be a part of an assignment to have students get a photo of something that it is that they are doing. The other thing is that for a lot of you, you may be stepping into a program that had no record books, like they don't know what it is. Then you need an SAE unit and a record book unit this semester. I would like to even say this quarter, but depending on what else is going on, you have to make sure that you're doing those things and making sure that it's there. And then today, this morning, on the call with the DESE supervisors, we were just reminding, like, make sure you're documenting things. So in the materials that I've shared, whether it's on the classroom or if it's in the shared folder, and then it's also available on the DESE website, the program planning handbook has some samples of SAE documentation forms. So it has kind of some of those spots that Scott's talking about it. Some of the time we get into the semantics of, like, is this an SAE visit? Is this not an SAE visit? You know, if you're talking to kids about what it is, like he said, what are they learning? What do they not know? What are some goals? That can be in class, in your classroom, on a looking at their record book, or it may be something of they're going to try to get a job. And so you're helping them to fill out an application, because kids need practice at that. They need practice with, like, actual writing in information. And so those are things that, all of those things, they may need help with. And so making sure that that happens. The other thing is that several of you on your calendar, some of you guys put down record books like in December and in May. And you really have to be doing it more diligently than that, even if that's not how you did it in high school, or even if that's not how you've seen it done or it's been done in the past, at least on that monthly level, to really get those kids engaged in those activities and what it is that we're doing. And don't stress out about what hasn't been done in the past, but definitely start now. Even if you have fresh, or even if you have like juniors and seniors, like, still go ahead and start them with something, but just don't let that be your measure of success, because it may not feel all that successful. We'll definitely say that way. And then I feel like there was one.
Miss Colleen.
Go ahead.
Miss Colleen, this is Scott. You reminded me of a couple things that I wanted to say and I forgot. Number one, the picture thing is incredibly important. I make it an assignment for all my kids every year to come up with 6 digital pictures of their project, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting to January 1st and you've got a kid who has a tremendous SAE project, but you can't do an application. Have phones and they can use them. So make sure that you get those pictures and you keep track of those. Now, the other question that I get a lot about SAE projects is, what record book am I supposed to use? Well, there's a couple options. If you go to old school record book forms there, and you can use those, and those are fantastic. I have some that were in Excel. Those are a bit outdated at this point, and you can use those. There was a fabulous teacher, I think maybe her name is form of the record book, which you have my kids using right now, because Google is what we seem to have. A lot of the kids have Excel. That is fine too. The thing with the Google is you can't erase a formula, they erase a formula, and then it becomes a bit of a challenge. I know there are several schools that are switching to AET, and that's acceptable as well. But, the big thing is having that record book and keeping track of things. And one thought of kids record books and doing record books, when I teach the leadership section of the record book, I tell them, look, this leadership section has everything you need to fill out any scholarship application you are ever going to fill out if you do this right. And I tell them, even if you take Ag Science 1 and you don't ever come back, everything you need for scholarships. So that's kind of a bait to get my kids to buy into, I got to fill this out all the time and stay on top of it. I know it sounds corny, but for some of those kids, that's really, really important. That's all. The other thing is make sure you have a good place to save it. That was something that got really difficult. You know, you need to talk with your tech people. What can you use? What can you not use? Where can you save? And, you know, we tried flash drives and kids lost flash drives. Make sure they're backed up and saved. The other thing that's really important, which especially like if your kids are doing it on Google and it's on the school hard drive, when they graduate, a lot of times schools will shut down that Google account. Make sure they get it moved over to another account so that you have those forms. So those seniors that graduated, you might want to talk to them, and you may not have contact with them, but find out who the seniors were so that you can get those record books, especially if they want to get their American degree or apply for proficiency awards. Okay, I'm done now.
Thank you, Scott. I just knew that gun shooting in the back, you were just forgetting some of what you would have told them, because I've heard you say that lots of times, and it is really, really positive. I think the big takeaway there is just to, again, go back to what he started with, which is 100% of our students are expected to have SAEs. Do they all look the same? Are they all going to be award winning? No, they're not. But again, we want them to learn a hands-on. They want to be experiential learning. And I think that is something that it's been something we have hung our hat on for a very long time, and we need to make sure we're still doing that. I'm also going to call out when he said about the SAE for all curriculum that can be very helpful in teaching that. And that may have not been something, you may or may not have seen that in your student teaching or in your teacher prep programs, because it's relatively new. And then even after we went on the closure, they've revamped even more. And so please make sure that you're also checking that out. And I'll see if I can put a link to that real quick in the chat box, or if Marie, if you can tell me where it's best located, I would greatly appreciate.
It's already linked at the curriculum enhancements at MissouriFFA.org.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to say the wrong thing, but I thought you'd said that the other night. So
Yep,
perfect.
it's already
And
linked.
one more time, that in case you guys are not aware, a lot of the things that, again, Marie has been collecting from lots of you guys, the conversation that started back during summer conference and even probably before that, of just helping to get things onto Google or other platforms that may need it. And so collecting more of that curriculum right now that could be used for distance or virtual learning. And again, that's under MissouriFFA.org. And that's going to be under the curriculum and resources that are there. So if you need any of those things, then please make sure it is there. And then, yeah, backing up record books over Christmas break and at the beginning of May. Who is admin? Who is that person? Just want to know. You've had good tidbits. Oh, Christy. Perfect. Okay, so down in Southwest, that is a great thing to remind them to back those up during Christmas break and at the beginning of May. And then also sometimes it's just making sure that your tech people are aware that you have those records on there that are multi-year, keeping track of some of those things. And so that's really, really key. So, hey, we did pretty good. We made it in under an hour and a half. The only thing I just wanted to remind you guys of, so we will be having one more session. I'm going to send out a couple of polls, trying to make sure, I don't know about you guys, there's a few things on the calendar in the next couple weeks. And I think Lisa could probably tell us that it's like a moving target all the time. She could throw a dart and it might land on something, but it might have been something else that was scheduled that's now there. And so as we try to continue to adjust those sales, we're going to keep updating those dates. And so the final session of this workshop, we're going to be focusing on your kind of communication style and what it is that you need to make sure that you are self-aware about some of our personal tendencies that can impact your classroom, can impact you in your school community, and then even can impact you in your family and more intimate relationships. And so I think that's something that can be really positive. We're going to be using the DISC assessment. And so I'll be sending that link out to you in the near future. I knew for sure that Krista and then I think Molly, maybe Molly Joe, they were two that, or I'm sorry, Abby Holtz, that said that they did not, Abby had said that she did not get the email. And then Matt had shared with me that Abby also didn't. So if you did not receive this email with this information, please let me know. I feel like people are making crazy changes on my system, and I don't know if it has to do with, I don't think things that I save at the office on my Outlook are all the time going to my webmail, like digital or version, because I had them go back through it. Okay, Emily, I'll get there. She got it from, so I'm going to check on some of these and make sure that I went back through after our last meeting and checked emails that Lisa had sent from the state office. And so I'm not sure what's going on. I'm just going to redo that protege list from the beginning, I think, just to make sure we get everybody on there. So
I'm not sure any of my Southwest got this. I had to send it to everybody today.
what the heck? So it looks like, let's ask it the other way. Did any of the proteges get an email from me last night?
Colleen,
Okay,
one thing that I have found that I have to send them in smaller groups because a lot of them, they won't take mass emails and they'll hold them for a while.
Okay.
And so, like I know Zach sometimes won't get one for 2 days after.
Okay.
He'll get it 2 days after you sent it. So I usually break them into smaller groups and send them.
Okay.
Some of mine got the fall in service one that you sent at 9 something, but
Which
they
was-
did not get this one that you sent at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, my year one contact list is blank. Son of a gun. Okay.
That's not what I would say.
Well, I wonder because Lily texted me right before and said, I didn't get anything. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what happened with that. All the fun. I really do feel like COVID has invaded my computer. I'm not getting it personally, but there are issues with that. And then there are some other people that said that they did not get the, they've not got their USB yet. If by the end of the week you still have not received it, then let me know. Those all were supposed to have gone out. They left campus mail the Wednesday after Labor Day, so September the 9th. So I would have thought you would have received them by now. I will check with Carol in the morning to see if they have tracking on it or not. And then if not, but if you don't receive it by Friday, we'll put another one in the mail so you guys can get that. And then I've been trying to make sure with the classroom that if you are not in the classroom or if you would prefer your school email, if it was not working, a workaround for that is that I've got a shared folder that I can send you, and then you can put, exactly, Meredith, exactly. So, but it's one of those things that if you can have a folder that's just shared with you. So I'll share one with you that has all the documentation in it. So you can look at what the assignments are and those kind of things. And then we'll have just one shared folder with me and your mentor that they can review that, and all of your assignments will be put in that. And so that is something else that we can use as a workaround if you still are having trouble with that classroom. The deal with the classroom is that my Google Mail is connected to my Mizzou mail, for this stuff. And it's not a G Suite. It's not an educational G Suite. Most of you guys have an educational G Suite, and the security on that is set by your school system, which if they would open it for you to be a part of an outside classroom, that would also open it for their students to be a part of an outside classroom, which they're not going to allow. So I think it will work just sharing a folder with you. Is Whitney on? Whitney, did that work for you? Or is, who else? Jessica on? That's what I shared it with last night. Can either of you guys confirm that those shared folders are going to work right? Anybody? They may have left. So I'm going to go back through, and anybody that's not engaged yet on the classroom, I will just start sharing those folders with you, probably even this evening. I'll get a few more of you guys done, okay? I want to just thank again our mentors, both the ones that presented and those of you who are just checking in. Just keep on keeping that communication open, because one of the things we absolutely need right now more than anything is connection, which we get a whole lot more of a lot of times when we're face-to-face. And then final reminders, all of you should have received fall seminar reminders if you've not yet had your fall seminars. So those those would be coming up. This week is Central District, and then next week we start in the southern part of the state with Southwest and South Central throughout those next few weeks, and then in the second week in October with Southeast. And so those seminars are going to be some sharing. Okay, good. Krista said it looks like it works, so that would be great. So Krista, as soon as you know if you've got some things that'll upload to it, that would be awesome. We'll get that fixed. And I know the last thing that any of us want to do, especially me, is cause you any more frustration. And that's what it's felt like, trying to have a good idea where everything was in one place. And I didn't have all the things worked out, didn't know all the odds and ends of the ways some of those lovely Google protections work. But So please try to make it to a fall seminar. If you cannot be on your fall seminar area, feel free to jump on another one. The first part of that conversation is going to be about curriculum and resources and just kind of getting a feel for what's going on and if there's ways that we can continue to assist in different things. If there's something that you're concerned about or thinking about, I had a teacher reach out today about those like proficiency applications and just keeping students motivated in general. And so those are some things that I know Mr. Dean, I've talked about it a couple times, and this may really be the time to start having some of those conversations in November, December on thinking about those all a variety of different applications and hosting some webinars on that. Marie hosted last week a webinar on Zoom and then Loom, which is another video capturing software that you can use. And that was awesome. And that's also available there on the link to that. So if you want to watch it in the past, if you want to watch those and you didn't see it in the past, you can also go to our Missouri FFA and the curriculum page and find that on the enhancements. Anything else for the good of the cause? Ben, you need to smile.
Hey, Colleen?
Yes.
And I came in late because I got detained for bus duty too. But the first Zoom call, I was tied up with area officer interviews. Is there a link to go look at that just so I get credit for attendance for that, or how does that work?
Absolutely. And that is something that I'm going to try to get those to. Marie has been helping me get those things on YouTube, and I just need to cut. I'm learning a lot of these things as well.
Sure.
So some of the
Yeah,
time it started recording like 20 minutes literally before when I started my computer. And so if people try to figure it out, they're like, oh, this is going to be blank. And so I've got to get that edited. Those are going to happen tomorrow before I go home. So she will have that one. And then also the Google Docs one, because it was the same way. It's like 20 minutes of nothing. And that was not helpful. So hopefully we'll have that out and I'll send those links to you guys. And then she'll also post them for me. I hope in that, that doesn't always happen within the week. It depends on when their webmaster can get those posted, but it will be soon. But we'll send the link out to the protege. Hopefully I'll have some email addresses in the list. I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
Maybe my son was on my computer. No, I'll blame it on one of them.
Right.
I don't know what happened to that though. Perfect. Any other questions or any other thoughts? The only other thing I'm going to say then is on those fall seminars, please share your thoughts. Please don't hesitate because if you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it, someone else is experiencing it, somebody else is dealing with an issue. And we collectively, myself, DESE supervisors, mentors, we cannot help you if you don't identify to help us then to help you figure out solutions that are there. I'm going to collect all of those slides that we had presented today and also get those sent out to you guys. And then I also made several notes on the ones that didn't have slides, and we'll just kind of share out some of those thoughts and ideas that were also there, and then also go from there. So, and then as with everything, if you have other questions, you are always welcome to give me a call. You're always welcome to contact your DESE supervisor. But we really also, the person that's right there in the field just down the road is going to be your mentor. So make sure that you strive to do that as well. Okay. So any other questions? I don't think the sky is quite this beautiful tonight. This is a picture I took, I'm pretty proud of our farm from a couple of weeks ago, but it is a nice night and it's still daylight. So y'all need to get out. If you're still at classroom, shut off your computer and go home. And if you are at home, then go do something you love. Any other things? Keith D. Schultz says, just keep adjusting your sails. We're going to get through this together for sure. So, all right. I don't have anything else. If there's anything anybody needs, if you need to stay on, then go ahead and stay on. Otherwise, we will talk to you again soon. Have a great evening. Thank you, guys. Lisa, it's good to see you.
Hey, Colleen.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you happen to see if my assignments come through Google Classroom okay? For some reason, it'll work through my personal Gmail, and I have no idea why. Yeah. I can't make it work to my school because I'm an administrator for Google Classroom at school apparently now.
Okay. So, yeah, it was actually working. I know I saw your name had come up on it.
Okay.
Let me check real quick. I'll just pull it up real fast.
I'm learning as I'm going with Google Classroom too.
You're perfectly fine. And also I had also sent you, because I knew you were another one that had an issue with it. So I also sent you if you preferred to use your school email, then I also sent you that shared folder, I'm pretty sure. Because I
Okay.
said some of them that had responded again, and I just got to go back through that list. And I had it on a different computer that I didn't have at school today, or last night actually when I was working on the rest of it. Let me
It'd
find
be
it.
nice to leave it on the school email address for simplicity, but
Right.
I don't have to.
Okay.
And I thought maybe there was a problem with using the Google Classroom. I talked to our IT gal and she said, well, she thinks it's on possibly on your end with the MU or something. And I'm not sure.
Right. They think it's on my end, but it's actually, I checked into it, like even with our, with the IT person at Eldon, I was like, okay, let me get this straight and make sure, like, because mine is just a personal email, and there's a little diagram that shows where, I mean, it comes up as a personal email. It's not in any kind of G Suite. And if they are an educational G Suite, and you're like a student, it's not going to allow you to share that. It was what
Okay.
he also said. Okay, let me find people. Ben Fazette. Where does it show me? Okay. It's not showing me your email address for some reason.
Okay.
I see you just as Ben Fazette, so I don't know what, but it does look like you, there are things that are pulled up here,
Okay.
turned in. Yes, I have everything turned in for September 15th.
Okay. That's good. Well, at least
Yeah.
on the right track. I just
Yeah.
on a whim, I tried a personal email account that I've got Gmail that I never use. And I thought
Right.
just on a whim, I tried and it worked. And I thought, well, it's either worked perfect or I jacked it up, one or the other.
Yeah, no, I think it looks like it worked out fine. And I think that's the
Yeah.
other deal is just that, let me pause this recording actually, because we don't need to be recording this.